Welcome back to the Dragon Ball Super discussion video in which today I am joined by Mark, aka Real to Real, the realest guy on YouTube, a man who really needed no introduction because he's the realest guy on YouTube. Say what's up, man.
Hey YouTubers, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, D-Free.
No worries, man. So today we'll be talking about God Ki and the inconsistencies slash issues with God Ki. So if you guys recall, back in Battle of Gods slash the Battle of Gods saga of Dragon Ball Super, it was explained that you needed 5 Saiyans to partake in the ritual in order to reach the level of Super Saiyan God. So that's all fine. I mean, I have no issues with that. I mean, I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere, but I'm okay with that. But, you know, moving on past that, my issue is with the progression from saying, hey, you need 5 Saiyans to being, oh, this is something you can attain on your own. And, you know, I have issues with the way that they attain the form. I think that that's honestly quite sloppy writing. I don't think that that's a good way to explain it, because when you say Vegeta, okay, was able to entirely skip over the necessity of having a ritual and was able to do it on his own simply by training under Whis, who, yes, albeit is a godly entity. We don't know exactly what he is because he's just a being named Whis. You know, he was able to train and achieve that level of power on his own. I think that that's a little bit sloppy, because you say that, okay, he trained, but all he truly did was learn better ki control. That's literally what Whis told him. He said, you can surpass Goku, who is a Super Saiyan God at that point. You can surpass Son Goku if you learned better ki control. So essentially what he did was he went over to Whis' planet, or Beerus' planet, to train with Whis for 6 months, and he learned how to sense God ki and essentially learned better ki control. So I am just not on the fence with I'm just not agreeing with the idea that essentially you can become a god by saying, okay, keep your ki within yourself. Keep your mortal ki within yourself. I've said this so many times that I know my subscribers are familiar with this opinion, but it just really irks me, like, at the bottom of my soul, because I genuinely think that if this concept was introduced any sooner, we could have had Super Saiyan or Super God Goku as a kid. Like, seriously, like, come on now. I just feel like that's incredibly lazy writing. I mean, there were so many theories going around. Like, I had a theory, you know, maybe he got some ki from the ritual, which I would have been perfectly fine. That would have at least explained it, because, you know, you're still tying it into the necessity of having the ritual, as opposed to completely rewriting the necessity of having the ritual and saying that, well, the ritual is essentially the only way to get to this red-haired form, which is essentially insignificant because all the villains we're going to face are too strong for the red-haired form. So there's really no point to ever do a ritual again. But in actuality, you can get the form by simply training. And, you know, I just feel like it completely contradicted itself in that essence there. But how do you feel, Mark, about, you know, the progression, like I said, from the ritual to the revelation that Vegeta can achieve the form on his own through training? How does that stuff make you feel, man?
I feel like you're going to have people talk about that Vegeta, like something you pointed out actually at the beginning of all this, that Vegeta actually got it from the ritual himself. Although that's a whole lot of headcanon stuff that, like, you can accept if you want. It's just really kind of obnoxious and, you know, really out there in terms of what is acceptable in terms of Dragon Ball lore and everything. But just like to go off of what you said, I'm not really a big fan of it either. Like I've said before in my videos, and I'm sure other people's videos as well, the whole concept of the God ritual in the first Battle of Gods movie was kind of I mean, it wasn't. It was neither great or terrible or anything. But in the series, they did filler type stuff with it and made it just this epic, world shifting, night day, snowing, raining, like hurricane, like all this fucking shit. Like it was impactful, it was meaningful, it shook the world, it did everything that was like epic that you could have done in a Dragon Ball Z kind of transformation. And the problem is with that is now they've kind of pushed that aside. It's like, oh yeah, we know that was epic, but here they are obtaining the form off screen. They pull an Ichigo and they obtain that form off screen, and it's stronger and it's everything else. It's like, who cares? I mean, like, who cares about this form? Like, if you can achieve this form just by keeping the energy inside you, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, why aren't they just, like you said, why aren't they just doing that at the beginning of the entire series or something? And it also makes me mad that, let's be honest, you sit there and said that Vegeta goes and trains with Whis for 6 months before Goku gets there. And when Goku gets there, it's obvious that he can sense God Ki because he can sense Whis where he couldn't before. But when they put Goku and Vegeta into that little time chamber thing of God Ki, Vegeta still couldn't move. So Vegeta masters this whole concept of keeping the ki within his body in the matter of minutes or however long it takes them within that thing. Whether it's days or hyperbolic time, it's probably days that they were just sitting there freaking frozen in the midair, couldn't do anything. But just in terms of what we saw in actual footage, it's just seconds. And like, what was the point? Like, how is, if Vegeta hadn't learned to leave the stuff in his body, the energy in his body at this point, how was he a god? How was he able to sense God ki? Like, how is that learnable?
Exactly. That's the whole thing. It's like when you talk about God ki, you say, okay, well, let's take it a step back. Let's talk about Beerus and Champa. Okay, we know that Vados and Whis are their mentors. How did these guys get God ki? Were they born with it? Or is it literally something that is learnable? If it's learnable, that means that anybody could technically become a god. And I just feel like that shits on the whole entire concept of saying that you're a god. I mean, it's just weird. But, gods have always been a bit of an anomaly in Dragon Ball, because you say, okay, Dende is the god of Earth. Yes, god of Earth, not Guardian, please. He's the god of Earth. Like, he was a regular Namekian. Like, did he undergo some sort of ritual? Like, did Popo bestow some god ki on him? Like, how does this work? Okay, how does God ki work in Dragon Ball Z / Dragon Ball Super? It truly doesn't make any sense. And then, like you said, you talk about Vegeta. Okay, he's inside of this God ki chamber. That's what everybody dubbed it. He was clearly unable to move. And then what happens is they cut away from that and they cut to the Resurrection F stuff. And then they just come back. Oh, these guys are done. We don't know how much time truly passed in there. They didn't elaborate. They never elaborated on how on Vegeta's training in general. They never elaborated on how he got God ki. And that's the main issue, because you can say that he trained, but where did the God ki come from? Does your mortal ki, through being, manipulated in a way that it stays within yourself, does it completely just morph into a God ki, and you can just out of nowhere, get abilities that you didn't have and sense beings that were on a higher level than you that you couldn't sense before? Does that make any sense? Does that truly make any sense? It just doesn't. Like, shit, if I got ki, I could become a god. Like, seriously, like, it truly just doesn't make any sense. And that's the main problem when it comes to not just gods in general in Dragon Ball Super. It just doesn't make any sense, especially when you start talking about the transition from being a mortal to being a god. It truly does not make any sense. And then you look at somebody like Frieza, who's on par with a god, but is not said to have God ki. So why did they need to become gods to get that strong? How come they couldn't do what Frieza did and just become super strong? It just truly doesn't make any sense once again. And then you see these guys, they're training, they're reaching new heights, they're reaching new levels, and you essentially get the feeling that God ki is where it's at. That's the only thing they can do. And then in the latest, portions of Dragon Ball Super via the manga and the anime, we see Goku, spoiler alert guys, jump back to using the regular Super Saiyan form. Okay. All right, so then why is he using Super Saiyan? What does that do for him? Okay, so does that mean that, regular Super Saiyan is less strenuous on your body than God ki? But wait a second. I thought that God ki was essentially you learning better ki control. Better ki control should automatically translate to better stamina with your ki. So how does that even make any sense? I understand that it's once again, I think Geekdom said it, a few people said it, it's a ploy to be able to sell, that Goku in that outfit with that hair, the yellow hair or golden hair, but at the same time, you have to try to find a way to weave it into the story. It really doesn't make sense, because you're going to say, yes, while he mastered the yellow-haired form, I understand that he was able to master it back in the Cell Saga, and that's how he got so good with it, and he was able to maintain the form for days on end, but how can that form be more, efficient than a God ki form that is essentially, in essence, somebody saying to you, hey, master your ki, learn how to keep it within yourself and not let it leak out, and you'll reach a new level. It doesn't make any sense, because that's completely contradictory. It doesn't make sense.
It also brings up the point, like, whether or not you can actually, like, you can turn it off or not. Like, can they just turn that off? Like, are they not gods? Like, what is this whole thing? So I think it's kind of obvious that Goku and Vegeta are not gods at this point. They're still worried about getting older, as we saw in the last episode and in chapter 8 of the manga. But the problem is like, they obviously now we know that they can actually turn off this God ki power, which makes really no sense, because when he was fighting Beerus, he was sitting there going, well, you absorbed the God ki power and now your body's kind of gotten used to it and it can utilize it. Now, does that mean that he can turn it off and on? What does that mean? Is it just simply like just literally keeping inside your body, like you said, is what turns it off and on. Well, why would you ever not want to keep it in your body, especially if it makes you stronger? Like, it's just really obnoxious that is actually part of the story now. It's actually a canonized part of the story that they can do that.
That they can turn it off. Yeah, I always saw that as being a problem. Because, you know, when they introduced God Key, we all assumed that they couldn't do it anymore. Like, that was it. That was where they were to stay. To say that they can... Huh?
Well, I'm sorry, but like Toriyama said that. Essentially, he said that they won't be going Super Saiyan 2 or 3 anymore. And when they turned it from SSJ to SSGSS, like there's no reason. Like they're essentially just going Super Saiyan anyway. Why bring them back to Super Saiyan or just regular Super Saiyan?
Yeah, it truly doesn't make any sense. I mean, them having the ability to turn it off doesn't make sense. And like you said, it's completely apparent that they're not gods. They're not, because they're mortals. They're worried about getting older, like you said. They're worried about aging. They made it a point. There was a reason why they brought that up in the hyperbolic time chamber. Thank you for joining me here today, Mark. This was a very, very, very fun topic and something that I've been wanting to talk about for actually longer than you're probably aware of. I've been trying to do this video for like a few months now, but I'm always really good about waiting for topics so we can get a little bit more explanation in the show so I don't look like a total ass like months down the line. But anyways, I feel like this was the perfect time, so I'm glad you decided to join me, bro.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Well, everybody, be sure to subscribe to Mark. His channel will be linked down below in the description. Be sure to leave You should leave a comment down below in the boombox with your opinions on God Key. If you guys like God Key, do you think that it could have been handled differently? Let me know down below in a comment, but that is it for us, guys. We will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.